Moonshine Jesus, baby, alright. Moonshine Jesus, a surprising delight. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are brought to you by progressivechristianity.org, and we need to let you know that there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the Titans, you're going to find out some stuff about it. We hope that you will follow us on social media, both progressivechristianity.org and the Moonshine Jesus Show. I'm here today with my good buddy Mark. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing good, man. Looking forward to the show.
Hey, me too. But before we get started, we've got to pour ourselves some drinks. Do you have a drink with you today?
I do. We're lucky we're doing the Titans, and there's a lot of relationship to Batman in this. And
yes,
there is a whole book out that was put out by DC called Batman, the official Gotham City cocktail book.
Okay.
So this was a little easier to come up with. And the character who doesn't show up in his superhero outfit, but is kind of always in the background of this show is, of course, the Batman. We see Bruce Wayne, but never the Batman. So I used the book and I made a Batman cocktail only because it's exactly what I like to drink. It's a cube of sugar, some bitters muddled together, pour bourbon on it. Get you a nice little orange peel for a little scent and a little extra flavor. And so the Batman, that's what I'm having. How about you, sir?
I like that. An official DC cocktail.
It is official. It's straight out of the book, man.
And it looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. It looks like it tastes good.
It's incredible. This is right up my alley, So
I know it is.
I'm happy about it. How about you, man? Where'd you go?
Okay, so this season of the Titans is filled with lots of talk about blood. There's a blood moon, and that's when one of the characters is supposed to come into power, and there's a lot of talk about him drinking blood and bathing in blood. And so I was inspired by all of this blood for the flavoring, but I didn't want anything that tasted remotely.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, you're not into the whole haggis and that kind of
not much of a vampire or any of that.
All right, well, fair enough.
So, but I've got a blood teeny, and this blood teeny is actually a coconut cherry vanilla martini, and so it is equal parts vanilla vodka, rum, cream of coconut, and you throw that in a shaker along with some cocktail cherries, and there you go.
It looks delicious. Cheers, sir.
Yes, cheers.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Oh, mine
How
too.
about yours? Yeah,
nice. It's great. So it's going to be a great show. We've got good drinks. We got a good show to talk about. So why don't we take a break, come back, and geek out about it.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. As Caleb's already told you, today we're going to be talking about the television series Titans. We are currently in season 4, and we'll be covering what they're calling part 1. It's just the mid-season cliffhanger was just put out last Thursday. And so for those who may not be aware, the Titans is it's based on a DC comic book superhero team called the Teen Titans, which is it's a group of young heroes who are headed up by one of the former Robins of Batman and Robin, who's now called Nightwing. And what sort of seems to be a habit of this show, in this season, the team finds itself in a new city. This time it's Metropolis, where they're faced with Lex Luthor's latest plans involving Connor, who is better known as Superboy. So my question to you, Caleb, is prior to this television series coming out, Were you a Teen Titan fan? Were you into them? I mean, what was your background with the Titans?
Yeah, so I hadn't read any of the comic books. I'd watched some of the cartoons and was familiar with the characters. And so one of the things that I liked about this when it came on was the exploration of some folks that we don't normally see. I feel like DC is very heavily Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. Aquaman in recent years, but very heavily Batman, right? In the Lego Batman movie, he calls it DC the house that Batman built, right? And I think that's right.
Exactly.
And so we don't get, DC has a rich universe that often didn't get explored. I think that's one of the cool things that Marvel has done is that they've reached in and taken some less popular heroes or less well-known heroes, and they've really elevated those in the last decade or so. And
we got movies about some of those characters. Yeah, and we got movies about some of those in the Marvel universe. There's whole movies about these what were semi-minor characters in comparison to the larger Captain Americas and Hulk and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really like what they did. So did you start watching this back when you could only watch it on the DC app?
I so did, because I'm enough of a geek that I had the DC Universe app, and I thought, especially for something without a very wide audience, because you do kind of have to be a geek to have a comic book app on your device. And so I thought,
all right, fair enough.
Right? I mean,
I'll take that. That's fair.
We may as well own who we are, Mark.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
There's no hiding it now. If people have been listening to Moonshine Jesus, they already know.
Yeah.
So
we're almost at a year of this, so they probably have a pretty good idea.
Know by now. Yeah. So I thought this is between this and then Doom Patrol that spun off of this. I'm like, this is really high quality content, and so I was pretty excited when it came to HBO to get a bit of a wider audience and to get a bit higher production value, I think, and a little more money put behind it. Yeah. And I've been impressed since it's been moved to HBO.
Yeah. I think the moving it was really important. I got the DC app only because I wanted to see the Titans. I wanted to see what they were going to do with this. I was the same. I didn't really, I probably read a few of the Teen Titan comics, but not many.
Right.
But I loved the cartoon. And I was, for the same reason, very interested in seeing what they're going to do with these minor characters, semi-minor characters, and how they put them together. And I got to tell you, man, those first two seasons, I don't know about you, I struggled. I had to go back and rewatch episodes so many times. There were just so many characters, and they were frequently giving them all like their own storylines, but sometimes the storylines didn't even, in my mind, make a lot of sense. They felt disconnected. Did you have that kind of?
Yeah, it was convoluted, man. It was convoluted. I liked it because it was like new shows, and I liked that they were exploring these characters, but it was convoluted, and the story arcs were all taking place separately, and I thought that was hard. And one of the compromises that you make whenever you're dealing with minor characters is that people also aren't as familiar with the backstories, and so everyone knows how Batman became Batman. Even if you haven't seen a Batman movie in 20 years, you know how Batman became Batman. You don't have to show his parents getting murdered. Everyone knows his parents got murdered. With these other characters,
and the pearls falling to the ground,
it's a bit more of a mystery, and I think that was part of the problem. I do think that they struggled in those early seasons. I think it's helped that they've all come together as a team. I think it's helped that they've all been in the same location for the most part and have been sharing a similar storyline.
Yeah, and I think, like you were pointing out, when they went over to HBO's, when we started seeing, I'm sure it was because there was more funds, so they could pull in other writers and add to that team and the creative team, and they were able to up the production value. And last season was really pretty good. I think so far season 4 has been really wonderful, and it feels like a team. They're acting like a team. We're seeing them interact with each other. And because there are fewer characters, because they have kind of gotten rid of characters as the season went on last year and entered into this season. We're getting to get to know the character, like Gar, for instance. We didn't really know much about him. As a matter of fact, in the previous seasons, they didn't really give him the screen time. He on the cartoon, like, he was one of everyone's favorites. He was such a cool, fun, crazy character. And they haven't been giving him any space up until this season. And all of a sudden, we're getting some pretty interesting things going on with Gar. And I think it's called The Red, where his visions are taking him to the red, and trying to figure out what that means and who he is within it. So I've really enjoyed seeing that. And one of the things I'm curious about your take on in this season. So this season is much more than any of the other seasons, leaning on the magical, supernatural, and also kind of horror themes. We haven't really seen. We might see little spots of it, but not to the point that we had zombie Deathstroke. So what do you think about this kind of shift? Feels like there's been a bit of a shift in this season in the type of genre that they're trying to fit into.
I think that's right. And I think that that's a larger shift that we're seeing within DC. Like earlier this year, we talked about Sandman and kind of the horror genre stuff. And I think maybe that's a niche they're looking to fill. There's, the kind of superhero kind of horror film thing, and I think that maybe that's right, that they've got some legs on that, and I think it's working well for them this season in this. I'm curious to see, though, there's been so much talk lately about turnover of management with DC and with James Gunn stepping up as well. I'm curious to see if this kind of new direction that's been started, if that's really going to happen. That doesn't really seem like James Gunn's thing to me.
Well, I think this is probably the last season of Titans. I think we're going to see a clean slate. I don't think he's going to take anything from the past with him. I think he's going to start from ground zero. So I think what we're going to see in the second part of the season is a wrap up of the storyline. I think that's why we've got so many big, like, there's storylines going on right now that season one would have been the entire season. And there's multiple of them. I kind of feel like the writing staff is sort of reading the writing on the wall and saying, if we think these are important pieces to get out there, we're going to have to put them all together in this season and play it out. But it's sort of working. I think they're doing a really interesting job with it. And I think one of those pieces that I like the most is what they're doing with Connor, with Superboy. As he was introduced, we've seen him trying to struggle with and understand who he is and what his place is. And this season in particular, he's really struggling with that as he went to meet his father, one of his genetic fathers, Superman, and ultimately wasn't able to, and ended up having to see Lex Luthor and him struggling with those two sides of himself. And I'm curious. So there's this one scene in the last episode where he uses his laser eyes to cut his hair off, and he shaves himself bald, and he starts wearing leather, and he comes in and he's all like, he's not this kind of like soft spoken, well, maybe we should do that, guys, and what are we going to do? He's just like badass, like, here's what we're going to do, and I'm going to do it in 3 steps, and I'm going to take care of them. It's going to be over. And Dick says to him, you're not the only one to ever have to go through this. Me, Corey, Rachel, Gar, we've all been there. We've all had to fight and battle with our dark side. And Connor says, this isn't my dark side. This is the side that's looking out for me. I'm curious, what's your take on that? This is the side that's looking out for me. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's the strongest about Titans is that it's dealing with character development in a very real way, and I think by necessity. So these are all people who are not established superheroes. They're people who are all coming into their own, just like in the comics and in the cartoons as well. But I mean, people who are growing into their identity, and so that necessarily means struggling with identity and change. And I think that's something that's kind of cool and unique about Titans that we don't always see in superheroes who are established established. So I think we see transformation in them. I think that's some of what we're seeing across the lines of all the characters. In terms of Connor specifically, I think it's the Lex Luthor side that's coming out.
Yeah,
and so
I mean the shaved head and everything. I mean,
right. I mean, yeah,
they kind of telegraphed that one, didn't they?
They really did kind of telegraph that. They didn't want us to have any kind of wiggle room there. And so, of course, the Lex Luthor side is the evil side. However, I think that this also kind of translates to our own lives as well, right? Like there's a healthy degree of looking out for yourself and like self-confidence and like knowing what you're good at and being able to do it, right? Because I mean his plan worked to a degree, right?
Mostly.
Mostly. I mean there's something about knowing what you're capable of and being able to do it without kind of pushing all others to the side without saying, hey, I'm a narcissist, right? This is all about me. Listen to me because I'm me. And so I think there's a fine line there. And I think that's the line that Connor is going to have to try to walk is, like not leaning too much into his Lex Luthor side. Is that what you're reading?
Here's my take on it. Okay. I think that this isn't actually very healthy at all. I think that this is coming from a place of fear. This is his bravado because he's scared right now. He's never dealt with magic before. He's never seen himself cut before, and he gets cut and even has something take over his mind, and he's never had anything like that. I think he is scared out of his mind that he needed to talk to Superman, who has dealt with this kind of thing before and has dealt with the fact that magic has some kind of a power over people from Krypton. And I think this is bravado. This is him trying to quell his fears. And I think he's going to have to deal with the fear before he can become healthy with this again. And it's going to be interesting to see, at least for me, how long this plays out. And I'm beginning to think, because let's face it, angry, badass Superboy is pretty cool. I mean, he's pretty cool.
He is pretty cool. Yeah.
And I think that they're going to want to keep him around as long as they can. So I think we're going to see that struggle go on. And probably it'll be the penultimate or the final show where he kind of deals with his fears and his anger. And who knows, maybe we'll get to have some kind of off-screen conversation with Superman, and his dad helps him, as he's leaning towards one genetic dad, maybe the other genetic dad will come in and help him figure out what his real fears are. And that could help him find and discover himself. Because as we both said, this really is a show of people discovering who they are and trying to figure out how to be okay with who they are and to move forward with other folks, this kind of chosen family that they have. Anyway, we could continue to geek out. We would if we had all the time in the world, but we don't. So the best thing to do right now, I think, is I know it's sad. It's so sad. It is. Well, we'll have a quick drop here and come back on the other side with some political, theological thoughts.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are moving into our Theopolitico segment. Every week on the Moonshine Jesus Show, we try to geek out a little bit, and then we try to relate this to theology and politics. And so today we're talking about the Titans, not Teen Titans. That's
not Teen Titans.
The Titans
and the comic book series. It is based on it. It's an easy mix.
It is. That's right. Yeah. I've got the source material very close.
There you go. There you go.
The Titans and how it relates to theology and politics. And so we were just talking a little bit about like future and destiny and figuring out who we are. And so one of the things that I see this show kind of exploring is whether or not we have the power to choose our future. And this season in particular, I think that's explored with Connor, but it's also explored with Sebastian, who's a new character that we haven't talked about much. And he's kind of a pivotal character that we see in relationship to his Mother Mayhem. And I'm curious, Mark, what you think about our own power to choose our destiny. Do we have power to choose our destiny, and to what extent is that laid out for us? Or
I'm glad that you brought up Sebastian, because I think he's sort of the perfect example for an answer to that question. In that, I think that of course, we can choose our destiny and our futures and determine that, but we are constantly impacted by everyone around us. We are more deeply connected than we ever want to admit, unfortunately, to everyone. And so the choices other people make definitely impact us. We see that with Mother Mayhem as she asks him leading questions about his childhood to try to get him to want to seize power. And we all have those kinds of influences in our life, and particularly in the United States, where might makes right and the powerful seem to have everything. And so we have all these influences trying to push us to do whatever it takes to be successful in terms of achieving power, like defining success that way. So I kind of love Sebastian, who becomes Sebastian Blood, being brought up. For me, we're going to another story arc. He starts off as this really kind person, and he was sort of manipulated into being a kind person by his own mother, if we trust the backstory that Mother Mayhem told him about what his mom tried to make him to be a nice person to the new kid that's in the house and all that kind of stuff. But he became this sort of nice person, except we see that flashback where he breaks up with this woman who actually cares about him so that she doesn't do it to him first. So he's kind of complicated, but a nicer kind of person. I think we'll probably get to see this great story arc where he's tricked into becoming this all-powerful evil person, and that ultimately he's going to recognize that who he was and his true self was the person that was friends with the Titans. I don't know. I mean, what's your take? I mean, that's weird coming from a minister who's supposed to be a Presbyterian minister who's supposed to believe in predestination. But no, I think there's lots of self-determination, but we have to be realistic that we're doing it in a place where we're connected with all folks and all have impact on us. What's your thought?
So I think this is one of the most interesting things to explore in Christian theology and with the Titans, because as we mentioned throughout this, that the whole principle, I think, of the Titans is that they're becoming who they are who they are. They're figuring themselves out. They're discovering themselves through being with this band of other people who are going through the same process. And they're recognizing that just because of who they have been, that doesn't necessarily determine who they are. So just because Dick Grayson has been Robin doesn't mean that he always has to live in Batman's shadow. Doesn't mean that Bruce Wayne's rules are his rules. Just because Raven has a father who is a demon and is evil doesn't mean that she has to be evil. She can determine that for herself, and she comes into her own understanding of who she is. So I think that's one of the things that's powerful about Titans. I think also that this is something that is interesting in Christian theology because a lot of people, even if they don't buy into like predestination, do buy into the theology that everything happens for a reason, or that things are unfolding as they're supposed to. And I serve a progressive congregation, Mark, as you do, and I have always been a part of progressive congregations. And yet this narrative continues on. That there is kind of a plan, that things are happening as they're supposed to. Why do you think that people continue to bring that forward, like that everything happens for a reason? Is there
I hear you, and I think it's one of the most harmful things that we do. And I'm going to add to it that this idea of trying to discover who God created you to be, I think is one of the most horrific things we can do to anybody, because it seems to put this unknown target that you have to hit precisely somehow, rather than recognizing God created you to be you, like and it's not really God created you as much as you were born, and now your job is to figure out who you are and in relationship with other people. And I think the reason that we fall into those kind of what I'm going to call shallow theological perspectives is that life is difficult and it's messy, and it's nice to feel like there's some kind of design to it. There is some comfort that can come with that. I think that comfort, though, is really short-lived because of all the things it tries to teach us, or at least we end up believing, like I just pointed out, of this. I've got to figure out who it is that God made me to be if I'm going to be successful in life. There's this one place, this one little spot that I got to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out how to get to, or else I have somehow failed. So we're trading temporary comfort in a chaotic world for ultimately feeling horrible about not being able to achieve what that temporary comfort seems to suggest.
Yeah, and it's not even that comforting if you really think about it. Really you described. I mean, it really is just kind of that shallow theology, or just something that we say. And I think that people, if they really think about it, don't want to believe that our life is laid out for us and we have to do things in a certain way, or that we have to be who we are. But I think that that's something important for progressives to look out for, language wise too, because I find myself saying a lot of times, hey, you are who God created you to be. And I think what I'm saying in there is that you are as you are, and that's good. But I think you're right too, that we can interpret that to be like, oh, but who am I supposed to be? Am I living into who I'm supposed to be?
Right.
Am I okay? Am I inherently sinful? All of that crap, all of that baggage,
all that horrible,
yeah, right, that people hang on to. And so that's one of the things I found myself dealing with more and more, is that people carry that inherited theology with them. You know, that stuff from kind of Orthodox Christianity that maybe we don't even confess to believe anymore, but like it's hard to shake off that baggage.
And I think one of the things we have to start doing is being more theological about it and thinking about what that kind of mindset is saying about God. If everything is laid out and there is a plan, that means that all the bad stuff that's happening was laid out and there was a plan for it.
Yeah.
And what that says about God would make for a God that I have no interest in being in relationship with, or worshiping, or anything like that. Not that I think God actually wants to be worshiped, but having that kind of a relationship with, that's not a God I would want to be in any kind of relationship with. So I think we have to start thinking more deeply theological rather than this shallow theology, to say, okay, maybe there is some comfort, maybe there is some just ease in believing these things, but what does that say about God? And is that the God that I understand that I'm trying to be in relationship with? And we certainly don't approach it that way enough, I think
you're right. And I think that even if we lay it out like that for folks, that most people see the problem with that, with a God who lays things out and lays everything out and evil things out, that if we describe a God in that way, that most lay folks are not interested in worshiping a God who has anything to do with evil. And so thinking about theodicy, the problem of evil, I think is important in that way. So one of the things that I think can be the most evil is perpetuating like strength, like this notion of power and strength. And so one of the things that Mother Mayhem says to Sebastian in the latest episode, as she's trying to seduce him to take a blood bath, literally like a bath,
literally,
blood.
Drink the blood and then take a blood bath.
Take a blood bath. She's showing him, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Mark, all of these scenes from his past that are kind of manipulating him into recognizing that he wants to go into the bloodbath, whether he really does or not. And so she says that strength ought to be valued over weakness. that that strength is what it's all about. Mark, I'm thinking about this in relationship to Christian theology. Do you see any places in Christian theology where we're valuing strength over weakness, or we've got like false idolatry, or we've got some idolatry around strength? I need some help switching this out, and I bet you can do it.
I don't know, man. I mean, in our modern world, obviously, the Christian church would never value power over weakness. Since that's where our text would. Wait a minute.
Wait.
Now that I said
I think I've seen it.
I think that there was this thing that happened. It's not really covered well earlier this year. Actually, the beginning of this year, that was political, but also there was a lot of Christian flags flying around during it. I don't know if you've heard of it, but some people tried to take over the Capitol building and change the elections.
In the United States?
Yeah. The president was kind of behind it too. He was kind of cool.
But surely Christians like stood up against it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Except for those, that were flying the Christian flag as they charged into the Capitol building. Which is kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean, it shows how disconnected a lot of really fit folks who consider themselves diehard Christians have become in the United States. How disconnected they have become from our biblical text. I mean, just this past weekend, I'm already delving in. I love going ahead and delving into the Christmas story weeks ahead of time so that we have enough time to really unpack it and really dig in. And one of the things we talked about was this kind of beautiful, piece of the Christmas narrative was really about, the comeuppance kind of sense of Christianity, that these kings were going after this child because he was a threat to their power, and the child's born into kind of lowly circumstances is going to, become the prince, but a prince of peace. It's so crazy that you can go throughout the Christian scriptures and over again show where this is definitely a movement about empowering the marginalized and not giving them power, but giving them equality by empowering them in that way. I don't understand. I mean, how do we get so? Is it the same as we were talking earlier? Is it just easier to do that? Is it easier to believe that God laid everything out? Is it also easier to just believe that your Christianity really wants you to be powerful and lord over people? I mean,
of course it is, because we're living in the most powerful country in the world. And if we were, and it's hard, I think, to be American and Christian, because in many ways they are inherently at odds with each other. If you're talking about a marginalized Jewish peasant who is your best teacher about who God is and about how you are to live your life, and he's always talking about standing in solidarity with those who are oppressed. He's always talking about how hard it is for the rich to be one with God. And then we are living in the richest country, even though a lot of people, are living in poverty. A lot of people have problems. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that we are living in the most powerful nation this world has ever known. And I think they are inherently at odds with each other. And I think whenever we really look at the Christian Christmas narrative, and we recognize that one of the things that it's about is confronting the Roman Empire, which achieves peace through victory and through conquest. And we're looking at a narrative about the Christmas story that's talking about someone who's going to bring peace through justice, that we have to put that at odds with where we are in the world, because we are empire, right? And so how is it that we live into being Christian, and how is it that we make some sense of that with our modern American values? It's a tough answer, and I bet we're not going to be able to answer it all.
We're not going to, but there's some hope as well. I'm looking at some of the chat that's going on, and Shirley Collis is a great example of the hope of people who get what exactly we're talking about. She says, yes, the birth of that baby under those circumstances was not about, quote, kingship, but empowering the marginalized. And that's exactly, Shirley, is right on point. That's what this is really about. It's what the whole Christian narrative is supposed to be about. Understanding why some people don't grab hold of that, or choose, maybe even recognize it, but choose to go otherwise and still wrap themselves in, the Christian name and try to claim it, it's going to be a long struggle for us to pinpoint what's going on there and to begin to help unlearn that kind of perspective, I think.
I totally agree. And I wish we could delve into this deeper, especially exploring the Christmas narrative a little bit more and how it relates to this as we're growing closer to Christmas.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is time for us to end the Theopolitico segment, and we've got to move into our favorite segment, Mark, which is the Make Me Look Stupid segment. We've got to try and make each other look stupid because it wouldn't be an episode of Moonshine Jesus if we didn't. So why don't we take a quick break, grab a drink, and let's come back and try to make each other look stupid.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. You have joined us for our favorite segment, the Make Me Look Stupid segment, where we delve into doing our best to ask a question that our partner cannot answer and hence looks stupid. Caleb, I'm going to jump right in on this one. Lots of times I like to give you the honors, but I'm going to jump right in on this. So one of the big things that happens, we get a new character this season, Jinx. And she's kind of delightful, and there's lots of interesting characters. She's kind of neutral, chaotic, and it's really fun to watch how she interacts with everybody. And once again, spoiler alerts, if you don't want to hear things, you should tune out right now because I'm about to spoil the ending of the show. We see Jinx, as she's helping the Titans kind of rescue Connor and try to rescue Sebastian and ultimately fell at that. But we see her take on the big bad in this and Mother Mayhem. And as she is trying to trap Mother Mayhem and kind of freeze her, Mother Mayhem manages to get a sword basically stuck through Jinx and she dies. Yeah. My question to you is Jinx really dead?
Nah, she's coming back because
what makes you say that? I'm interested.
Because of what she said when she got stabbed. She said, "Not again."
Right.
So implying that this has happened again, and she's come back. And I really hope she comes back because she is my favorite character in the show. I think she's
fantastic.
She's a lot of fun, and like you said, she's chaotic. She's a little unpredictable, and I really have enjoyed Jinx to the point, it's always kind of tough whenever they bring new characters on who kind of join the central cast. That's always a gamble, and a lot of times that doesn't really work out. In this case, I think she added a little levity to the series that it really needed. DC shows and films in general struggle from a lack of levity, taking themselves a little too seriously. And so I think her coming on is helpful in that way. So one, I don't think she's really dead. And two, I think it would be detrimental to the rest of the season if she wasn't in it. How about you? What do you think?
Can I crush your dreams just a little bit?
No, you can't. I want Jinx there.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
She's not listed in the cast list. She's listed as a recurring character.
Well, okay. You think she can recur for the rest of the season, Mark?
Well, then she would be in the cast list. So here's what I think is going to happen. It's not completely crushing your dreams. Here's what I think is going to happen. The fact that just like you said, she said, not again. Like it was really almost like annoying. She wasn't like, not again. She was like, oh, not again. But she's not in the cast list, which tends to indicate that she won't be in every episode. But she is in a reoccurring. So here's what I think is going to happen is that, no, she's not dead. There's going to be lots of angst over her death. And it's always interesting to watch Nightwing when he loses one of his members of his team because he kind of goes off the deep end. So I think we're going to get the dark, brooding Nightwing for a little while as they're trying to figure out how to get Jinx back. I think we will get Jinx back. I just think she's going to like say, you know what? You guys live a dangerous life. That ain't for me. I'm out. And I think we won't get her to the end of the season. That's my guess, but I don't. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. I hope she comes back, and maybe,
I do too. I'm with you. I love.
If by some miracle Titans gets renewed for a 5th season,
they better bring it.
Right? Then I hope she kind of joins the main cast.
Agreed.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question for you, Mark.
Okay.
It's about Tim Drake. Who is a new Robin who wants to become
a hopeful new Robin.
Hopeful Robin, right? So in the comics, he does become one of the Robins.
Yes, he does.
And so one of the interesting takes that they have on Tim Drake is that he's gay and he is starting a relationship with one of the
Star Labs.
Star Labs people, scientists, I guess, who works at Star Labs.
So, yeah.
So I'm curious about 2 things. One, how do you think they handled Tim Drake's coming out here, and how do you think that DC is comparing with Marvel in terms of LGBT characters?
Well, let's start with the second part of the question first. DC,
okay,
they're really horrible at it, and if anything, they promote the importance of masculinity and femininity. They try to, their characters have to be very masculine, or even if it's a strong, incredible woman, they want to make sure she's still presented as feminine as possible. So that, and they do that over and over again, and that does not help with any understanding of sexual identity and sexuality at all. In the case of Tim Drake, I think they did a beautiful job. It was so sweet and cute, and you could feel the kind of weird, kind of like first love tension happening, and those little glances and quick little words they said to each other. I thought it was absolutely adorable the way they approached it, and then I love how they showed the relationship. There was this real kind of picking on each other, but also this real making it clear that they admired each other in really healthy ways. And I just thought they handled it great. I love the setup to it. We could see it was coming. Then they had the kiss, and I love his reference when everyone's talking about what a day it's been. This happened, and man, we had to fight this person. We had to do this, and he said, and don't forget the kiss. Don't forget.
Right.
Absolutely loved it. I mean, what do you think, man?
Yeah, so I think that I liked Tim Drake's storyline. I like that they made the character gay and that we got to explore that with him. I thought that was great. I think that DC tends to handle LGBTQ plus issues better than Marvel does. And so I think that Marvel does almost everything better than DC. I think over the past decade that has been proven true time and time again. But one of the things that I've seen and been impressed with, especially in the silver screen versions of DC characters, is more and more emphasis on portraying LGBTQ plus folks authentically. And so I think about so we've got this here in the Arrow or in Titans, and I think in the Arrowverse we see a number of LGBTQ plus characters that have been on the CW and have kind of shown a little more authentic kind of lives. We've really seen them live into and explore their sexuality in a healthy way, and I don't think we've seen that as much from Marvel. Can you think of any Marvel examples of where we've seen?
Well, off the top of my head, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to come up with them, but I do remember there being several times where you actually asked me the question about a gay character or a queer character in Marvel and how I thought they handled it. And I've always felt that they've handled them very well and make it, again, also very normal. So maybe we're seeing two sides of the same coin, and I'm seeing it in Marvel and you're seeing it in DC, and maybe the reality is it's actually in both, and they're becoming pretty good at it. Because of my head, I'm not thinking of a lot of DC characters where it was a primary character where we learned something, and I see a lot of the opposite in DC, the machismo and the importance of that kind of thing. But I completely trust your judgment. That you're seeing it for me means that I need to go back and rethink it and look a little closer at it.
Well, I'm thinking about folks like Black Canary, the original Black Canary, and in Arrow and the Arrowverse. Something.
Right.
I'm thinking about
the most recent,
the
most recent iteration of Batgirl.
Right. So I'm thinking about some characters like that. But I think you're also right, Mark, that we're seeing this kind of play out more across superhero, across all mediums, but including superhero mediums, which I think is good because I think our society in general tends to equate all superheroes with kind of this machismo thing. And so I think having both major franchises kind of combating that by exploring issues of sexual orientation and gender identity is very important. So maybe lifting up what superhero shows are doing well is a good
absolutely
place.
That is definitely it. Absolutely is. And so before we go, though, we need to talk about what we're going to do for the next show. So, do you want to share with folks where we're going on the next show?
I can't wait to. It's going to be exciting. You're going to need to watch the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it is, I have seen it already. I'm going to watch it once, maybe 2 more times because I love it that much. This is one of my all-time favorite holiday specials. It is hysterical. There's this fun storyline. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm just telling you what a brilliant, fun show they put together. And there's some parts in it that are going to help when Guardians of the Galaxy 3 comes out next year that you're going to need to know anyway. So you're doing yourself a favor because you're going to enjoy it. And you're also going to learn some information so that you'll be ready when the show comes out. The movie comes out next year. So with that said, Caleb, aren't you excited? It's going to be great, man. I can't wait to. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to hear your take on the holiday special. I genuinely.
I mean, I've been waiting until closer to the show, but you've got me so pumped about it, Mark, that I feel like I need to watch it tonight so that I have time to squeeze in 2 or 3 more viewings.
You won't be disappointed, and you'll want to see it again. I promise. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Well, all right, we've wasted 47 minutes of your time tonight. We really appreciate you being with us and sticking through the end of the show and listening on the podcast as well. Thank you all for doing that. Make sure you always subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe in any of the places a podcast are offered. With that said, cheers to you, Caleb. Another fun show. And to those out there, thank you again. And till next time, we'll see you on the Moonshine Jesus Show.
Moonshine Jesus, the sky. Moonshine